CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We are joined once again by Sanya Mathura. And if you don't know Sanya, she's with Strategic Reliability Solutions. She's an author. She's triple smart. I always say that. She doesn't like hearing it, but it's really true. And we want to give a real quick shout out before we get started with our episode to number one, Bob Latino, the godfather of the HLM. And we also want to give a quick shout out to Andy Gager, who is right now, as we speak, at the NFMT Baltimore conference. He's going to be speaking, presenting, causing all kinds of trouble. But Sanya, today's about you. Welcome back to CMMS Radio.
Thank you for having me so much, Greg, and thank you for my swag. I love it. I can fully represent properly with this, and it keeps me in the shade too, so that helps.
Yeah, we got lucky with this because right now you are on your U.S. tour.
I love it.
We got the timing just
perfectly
right, so we could get that to you instead of having to ship it down to Trinidad.
Oh my gosh, yes. Then I may have not gotten it at all. So I'm so grateful that you worked with me and we figured out how to get this to Texas right now, because I am in Texas at the moment. So glad that we could have gotten it and made it happen.
Yes, and just to start off, today it was either today, no, it was Friday. Friday, you were visiting the Southwest Research Institute, and you got to see something very cool.
Very cool.
Can you tell us all about that?
I can tell you about some of the things that I got to see. Other things are off the record.
Well, let's go with what's...
That's what the ones that are on the record.
Yeah, let's go with what's on the record. We'll keep that secret stuff.
Yes. Out of it, for sure. So I got to see this 18-wheeler truck that is run fully on hydrogen. And right now, they are actually making the rounds throughout the US. It's a bunch of different companies that collaborated, of course, with SWRI to, do the research and see, is it even possible? And it's the only one in the world. The only 18-wheeler in the world. Massive, huge. All of these companies are coming together. SWRI is monitoring it and making sure, with all of the different tests to make sure that it works. So seeing that in real life, and while they were still doing some stuff on it, so cool. Like, that is the future. If that such a big heavy duty truck could run on hydrogen, what else could run on hydrogen?
Yeah, they can go bigger and they can go smaller.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
So it's so cool.
What do you think of their, I mean, obviously you can't give away any of their secrets or anything, but how they're set up at the facility when it comes to how they manage the facilities and the things that are happening inside of it?
It is a mini ecosystem. Very much self-contained. They can handle anything thrown their way. And just Peter Lee, the lead that is at SWRI for tribology, he's done an incredible job in terms of bringing a beautiful team together, a team that is so diverse. They have so many different specialties, and they have their creative direction. And he allows them, some creative direction as well in terms of crafting different tests or trying to figure things out in a different way. So it's so good to see that, especially that they're not sticking to just staying in the box. Like, they are doing modifications, they're challenging certain things, they're trying to see how best they could replicate things as per the real world. Because you can't just test according to, well, this is the particular standard, we're going to go with that. Not all the times the equipment in the real world will meet the standard. They'll exceed the standard. They'll have so many different operational characteristics or environmental changes that, are not entirely prepared for according to the standards. So they go outside the box. They test and they push a lot of the lubricants or and I'm just talking about the lubricant side of it, but they test so many other things. I know they're doing, and we see it all the time on their page as well, work with aerospace and so many different things, like so many different aspects. It's huge, very much one of the biggest facilities that I've ever been to, and definitely fully self-contained and self-run in terms of they are their own ecosystem. They've covered everything in that entire campus. Like it's, I could not walk around it. Clearly, they drove me around for the entire tour, but it was so good to see that they're genuinely taking testing to another level. They are, changing up things, trying to make it as real world as possible, or trying to push things to the limits where, you know, other labs may not have the approval to do that or the creative direction to do that. So it was really good seeing that and just being able to be around all of the different things that they keep doing and keep engineering and keep changing. So that was definitely one of the highlights of this trip.
Yeah, yeah. Now, prior to that site visit,
Right.
you were at a recent conference.
I
Tell us about
was.
that.
So it was in Detroit. And if you know about Detroit, you know about their weather. And their weather is pretty cold. Pretty cold. So we were in Detroit, and my time zones are so mixed up right now. I think it was last week. We were in Detroit last week for Lubricant Expo in North America. And that was 3 full days, 3 very packed days. Like we started off on the first day, we had workshops for anybody who wanted to attend. Really, we didn't charge for it, and it was myself, it was Greg Livingstone, Rich Wurzbach, Mike Holloway, um, and of course we had a couple. Rafe Breton he started off the workshops, and we did stuff on turbo machinery. And then we also, in the afternoon, I think Rich went through some stuff with food processing lubrication. And then that prepared them for the exam in the afternoon. So people could have actually gotten certified with their ICML badges on that first day. Like that's the best way to start a conference. It
Then
was
you
great.
you also had the live unboxing of
We
Grease
did.
Thief.
That was on the second day.
Yeah, and then a couple of HLMs. Another shout out to Bob Latino.
A lot of HLMs, a lot of HLMs just happening on the floor, on the stage, grabbing dinner in the night, or even during lunch on the days. Some of those HLMs could not have been caught on camera, but couldn't. But
The
it
best
was
ones go
the best
undocumented.
ones, the best ones.
So curious about kind of the theme, not just with what you do,
Mm.
but with that event and kind of lately this year, were there any themes around how folks are leveraging their understanding of lubrication best practices as it relates to technology like CMMS platforms? Was anybody talking about how this fits into their maintenance management overall scheme or schema?
Some people did. Some people are still kind of struggling with getting to that level. So a lot of people are still, and that's a good thing about the conference is that we got so many people in the same room so that they can have these conversations, so that they can actually start getting some of these things right. Because some of them missed it. They're just like, I'm just doing what the guy before me would have done. They don't have any knowledge about a CMMS or even, putting things in place like, or even how to integrate AI. We talked about that as well. That was on one of the panels that I did. Um, we talked about how AI could be used in terms of formulation, like trying to get the right formulation because it has so much data. And it's such an interesting topic because a lot of times people or chemists in the lab, they are struggling to get different formulations right in terms of getting the right mix for that particular lubricant. So one of the guys on one of the panels, he was talking about using AI to generate different formulations. And then afterwards you test it out. So you're not using AI as a replacement for somebody, you're using it as a tool. And I think that's one of the main takeaways from this conference, unlike a lot of things I've been seeing in general. People are thinking about AI as a replacement, but it's not. If it's used properly, it can be a tool. And you just need to be able to use it to your advantage in terms of what are you trying to achieve from it, whether it's maximum efficiency, and it goes hand in hand with your CMMS because you need to have the data.
It's
You
true.
need to start off with having that proper data. So that's one of the conversations that we had a lot, going around on the floor, just people trying to get into that mode of coming out of the firefighting system and trying to be able to put things in place to get things done and actually start documenting because people don't realize how much information they're losing on a regular basis by just not documenting. Like
That
documentation is critical.
that's the simplest, most straightforward reason behind having a system of any kind, CMMS
Hmm.
or similar, to document what's happening, what has happened. Of
Hmm.
course, you can develop some future planning, but
Right.
that's what's missing. And I think there's a lot of debate as to whether you really need a CMMS if you're going
Hmm.
to develop, say, for example, a reliability program. And the answer is clear. You can do that without a CMMS. However,
Hmm.
you can do even better with a
With the
CMMS
CMMS,
because you're going to
yes.
get that critical data, right? And to your point
Yep.
on the AI, in the context you're presenting it, when it comes to lubrication and formulas or
Mhm.
formulaic viewpoints on the lubrication, you're using it almost like a calculator as opposed to
Yes.
replacing a person. It becomes that tool to help you do the quicker calculations. And of course, it should be vetted, and we should know that it's
Yes.
actually telling you the right thing because if you lean too hard on it, you're going to create blind spots. Is
Mhm.
lubrication just in and of itself, lubrication by itself, a best practice we can bring into different plant and factory environments, absent any other technology, to get a pretty early impact on machine reliability?
Yeah, for sure. Because I think lubrication is I would say it's one of the low-hanging fruits in terms of if you get it right, you can solve so many issues. If you get it wrong, you can create so much more issues. So it is one of the low-hanging fruits in terms of making sure you have a clean lubricant. Just basics. Clean, it's free from all of the different contaminants. You're just doing the best to keep it as clean as possible. That's basic, very basic. You don't need any technology for that in terms of filtration is nice, all of those great things that would help with it. But if you start at the basic, very basic level on any plant, just making sure you're not using dirty containers to transfer your lubricant, or you're just observing, you're not leaving the caps open or the drums open out in the weather and having so many crazy things get in there. Um, that keeps it clean. Not storing it out in the rain to get water ingress into it and then you're putting that into equipment. Oh my gosh, no, definitely not. So they're basic storage and handling practices that could really help you with your lubrication in any plant. And those are quick wins because if you were to think about how much contamination happens and how many failures are associated with contamination, then you realize how much you're losing. Like Because when you think about lubrication, you're thinking about these very specialized systems that have very tight clearances. Nobody wants to have contamination involved there. Once contaminants get in, you start getting all sort of issues. And you know what? They can also act as catalysts to, speed up whatever degradation is going on in your oil. So what happens then is that you end up changing your oil so much faster because you didn't, keep it clean. Very basic. Very, very
Yeah.
basic.
A lot of waste that you're
Mm-hmm.
eliminating there by doing these best practices ahead of time and making it part of your kind of, I'd say, daily, right? It should be kind
Yes,
of a
it
constant
should be.
monitoring, and like with a person, right? Monitoring and sampling and making sure that there are no problems, because with proper lubrication, you're going to increase the longevity and function of the parts, which speaks to the design intention behind the machine that these parts are in that require this lubrication. And those small improvements, right, by preventing those quick degradations, gives you more throughput. And it's pretty simple. I don't think it's rocket science. What do
No.
you think the chances are, if I had you leave where you are right now and go to the nearest plant environment, that you could find quickly a
Mm-hmm.
problem with the lubrication,
I
whether it's
did.
the
I did.
practices or if you went and took a sample? What do you think the
Mm-hmm.
chances are? Just a rough estimate. What percentage chance is it that the nearest factory or plant
Okay.
has a problem with their lubrication on a machine?
90%. I looked out my window and my window overlooks like this little generator part thing, and I'm just like,
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, let me just leave that alone. Leave that alone.
Do you get that wherever you are? Like if you're
You
walking through
do.
an airport, if you're,
Mm-hmm.
anything like that, you're just kind of,
Yes,
you're
you're like, oh
seeing
my
it, you're
gosh,
seeing it.
this, that, next. I need to talk to your management. Something is wrong here. We're not gonna have um, another Heathrow thing going on. I mean, that was terrible. Like you had so many flights grounded on that day just because of a simple problem. And that it goes directly back to maintenance. And maintenance is making sure that your equipment works properly when it's supposed to work, that you're doing the checks, that you're making sure that everything is running as it should be. You're doing the oil analysis or the grease analysis accordingly. You know, you're monitoring what's going on in your equipment. And that's the important part. If you're not monitoring anything, then how will you know? Like, you can't just like some people are good, like they're really good in that if they just look at the equipment, they're like, okay, well, something is wrong here, but not everybody is. So in those cases, you want to monitor, you want to do your oil analysis, you want to do your grease analysis, you want to do your vibration analysis or ultrasound analysis because you can't just depend on one form of analysis or one form of monitoring because it's like going to the doctor. I don't really want to go to the doctor. Um, you take a blood sample. Um, then they may say you have to take an X-ray, or you may have to do an ultrasound, depending on which part you're looking at. Or even if you take the regular blood sample, then they'll be like, okay, well, they need to take the specialized blood. If you're doing like a liver function test or kidneys or something else. So it's the same thing with oil analysis. You have your basics, and then you have your more specialized tests for certain things. So it depends on what equipment you're working with, but you have to analyze this stuff. You have to be aware of what's going on before you can make a decision because you simply can't say, okay, that's it, we're going to change everything, you know, the end. It doesn't work like that.
It's a great analogy, and it just gets me thinking, because when we think about this analogy of going to the doctor and analyzing our blood, because we're taking a
mm-hmm.
sample of that blood, and then we learn something, right? The lab people and the doctor, they learn something. Oh, we got to look a little bit deeper here. Well, what's at stake for us is quite similar to what's at stake
Yeah.
for machines when it comes to potential failure or catastrophic failure. There's kind of a slight difference between those two. And the monitoring is what gives us the opportunities to mitigate. We're not necessarily going to prevent failures with our lubrication best practices, but we're sure the heck going to reduce the likelihood, right?
Right.
Do you believe failures can actually be eliminated?
I think they can. I definitely think they can. And it starts with identifying your root causes. Like if you don't identify the root cause, then you're going to be troubleshooting in the dark. You're going to be changing the wrong things. And unless you get down to that real root cause, then you're not going to be able to solve the problem. So always get to the root cause, and you can actually eliminate some of those failures that you're having, because nobody wants to have those failures.
No, it's too disruptive. It's really too disruptive. So
unless you're working for the overtime and like you just want the overtime, like that's the only reason I could see people wanting to have failures, you know.
Also, I've heard many stories off microphone where people create problems because it creates more work for them and it makes them look good when they go and solve the problem. It's the hero mentality, but it's also to stay relevant, right?
Yep, definitely.
What is next for Sanya? You're wrapping up your US tour, but where do you head to next, and what's going on as you head into the second quarter?
Boy, there are so many things going on as we head into the second quarter. So we're wrapping up the US tour, and I guess we're going to do a European tour.
Where?
So you're going to be looking out for us in Portugal, in Germany, and in Barcelona. So look out for that.
Is Barcelona in May?
Oh, I'll have to check my calendar, but I think it is.
I'm just curious because I saw some news about there's a Mobius Connect Live in Barcelona.
There is a Mobius Connect Live in Barcelona, so I will be there. I am speaking at the conference, and we're actually gonna have I believe we're having a training partner meeting as well, so it's gonna be very interesting. I may have to brush up on my Spanish at some point in time, but I'll get there. I got the translator app on my phone, so I should be good.
I think you're going to be just fine, and I want to thank you for jumping on with me with this short notice episode. We kind of planned it, but we kind of didn't. And
the best ones.
Sanya, I appreciate you rocking the CMMS radio cap.
Of course.
And thank you for being here with me on CMMS Radio.
Definitely most welcome, Greg. Always happy to support.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.